Lady and the Tramp got a live-action remake in 2019, directed by Charlie Bean. As far as Disney live-action remakes go, it's one of the best, which means that it's just okay as far as quality is concerned. It's nothing revolutionary, it's more just a cute, innocuous cash grab obviously made to make some money and reap nostalgia and prolong the copyright for Lady and the Tramp. But it's done in a really endearing, charming way. The performances are earnest, the dogs are adorable, one of them is a rescue, and there's enough changes to the story to make it enjoyable to fans of the original, while good enough to make it a solid replacement for newcomers. Lady and the Tramp was admittedly never one of my favorites growing up, so I can't pretend I'm awfully protective of it. But as someone that did watch it as a child, I prefer the remake. It's not great like the Jungle Book adaptation, but it's not inane like the remakes of the Renaissance-era films. It's just nice. Not a masterpiece, but fun. One of the many nice changes is that the humans have a bit more of a role in the film, which I think is a positive change. I care for these characters as they're actually characters, not just distant entities. Darling and Jim Dear are played charmingly by Kiersey Clemons and Thomas Mann, respectively. And while they've been criticized for being overly saccharine, I think that their performances are actually quite subtle. They're very sweet and gentle, kind and calm, but there's also an evident amount of fear. It's not paralyzing or manifesting, but they recognize their limitations financially and socially, and for Darling as a woman, and they are concerned with the possibilities of the future. This makes it even sweeter when they are able to, in the end, finally be confident. There's no growth in the original. They're basically the same characters, if you can call them that, at the beginning and the end. But in the reboot, Darling and Jim Dear go from frightened and passive to assertive and confident, and their progress is logical as they go from being able to challenge themselves, then their family, and then even strangers. They went from being one-note nobodies to fantastic side characters. But that's not enough for some people, is it? As I've seen on well over a dozen websites, which I will not link to, as I don't want to encourage harassment or even leave open the suggestion that I do, there's a lot of viewers that are upset by the fact that we've got an interracial couple in 1910s or 20s New Orleans. Now, they don't object to interracial relationships in general, no. I reckon if you asked any one of them, they'd say they have no problem with mixed-race marriages, but they object to the portrayal of a happily married interracial couple of the period not facing prejudice and racism. And, mind you, I've seen this argument from respected neutral cinema reviewers, from left-wing journalists, and from right-wing forum users. There's a few arguments that they have. They'll say portraying an interracial couple in pre-Loving v. Virginia South without showing them facing death threats, hatred, and terrorism is teaching children that America had no problems. They'll say it's dangerous to portray the past as better than it was. They'll say Disney is trying to erase both its and America's real history of racism. And then they'll offer one of three solutions. One, they'll say that the movie should have included serious, somber discussion and examples of the racism Darling would have faced. Two, they'll say the movie should have kept its all-white cast from the original. Or three, they'll say the movie never should have been made. But where was this fervor when Frozen came out? After all, in 1839 Scandinavia, women were socially considered incapable. A woman was believed to be unable to participate in a monetary interaction. Surely we should have had a scene where Anna was violently thrown out of this homophobic stereotype shop for daring to purchase something without a man present. But no, several of the authors that hate the racebending of Darling on account of there not being any period-accurate racism don't mind the idealistic view on women's rights that Frozen has. And I've checked their positive reviews of that movie. Or Tangled. Rapunzel isn't a married woman, but she thinks she can talk with all of these men in the Snuggly Duckling in pre-Enlightenment Germany? Please, only burghers may speak with artisans. She should have stayed outside and let Flynn do all the talking. But no, nobody ever says that this movie paints an unhealthy, dangerous picture of reality and history. And why stop with sexism? Maleficent doesn't have Aurora die of tetanus. That's so unrealistic. We're encouraging anti-vaxxing now? We want children to think that they can touch unclean surfaces, get punctures, and be just fine? No, it seems the only thing that has riled up this crowd of movies must correctly portray how awful time period X was is Lady and the Tramp. It's okay if Frozen presents an unrealistic view of 1830s Norway. Little girls should feel powerful. It's okay if Tangled shows a feminist version of 1780s Germany. Boys and girls should be encouraged to pursue whatever hobbies they want. It's okay if Maleficent isn't medically accurate. It's just fiction for kids. But with Lady and the Tramp, then, we need to see the suffering. When it's a black woman happily enjoying life and succeeding with her white husband, then we need historical accuracy to make children afraid. It's probably not surprising to anybody with knowledge about critical race theory or analysis of racial trends in movie preference, but every review I found that argued the movie should have talked about how hard Darling has it as a black woman married to a white man, or that she would have been better off left white, was non-black. Not all of these reviewers were white, but none of them were black, and therein lies the explanation of the complaints. Stories about white women can ignore sexism, because white girls need to be inspired. Sure, we'll still have media that has girls facing sexism, but it's not for the youngest kids, or even the majority of what's produced. Racism, on the other hand, seems to be the only thing that some non-black audiences are willing to see black characters encounter. Look at the most successful movies with black leads. So many of them, especially the ones that garner interest from non-black audiences, are about slavery, the civil rights movement, segregation, or discrimination. Obviously, these films should be made, but they shouldn't be the only way to portray black characters in leading roles. Meanwhile, I found multiple reviews from black women excited about the new Lady and the Tramp. I mean, this movie had Tessa Thompson, Janelle Monáe, Kiersey Clemons, and Yvette Nicole Brown. I'm pretty sure that's the most black women with considerable roles in a Disney film since Black Panther. Does a desire to see positive representation mean that these reviewers don't know what the past was like, don't know what racism is? Of course not. They know better than any of the writers I found begging for the Klan to appear to make a movie about dogs and love be more dramatic. That's because representation shouldn't only be about overcoming racism. Black kids should be able to see a movie about a black superhero without him being brutalized by the police. They should be able to see a movie about a black musician becoming successful without seeing them be belittled by white people. They should be able to see a movie about black parents looking after their kids without having the story center around whiteness. And they should be able to see a movie where a black woman receives love and affection without it being framed as dangerous or controversial. Black parents already have these conversations with their children. They don't need media aimed at children to scare them into thinking twice about being happy or content. As Kiersey Clemons herself said in an interview with blackfilm.com, quote, "I'm using my imagination a lot. With the times and this fantasy world of it being Disney and her being this young woman of color, how much of this is something that I can show, be a representation to all the young girls that are going to watch it. So I've made her a lot more assertive, and she wears the pants in the relationship. It's been fun, and this is Disney, so I get to use my imagination, and I kind of see it as like creating this world of what it may have not been in 1910 for women, or women of color particularly. I made her everything that maybe women didn't get the chance to be at that time." End quote. Nobody's pretending the world is or was perfect, either on set or in the audience. But white girls are allowed to have the Disney fantasy of being heroic and successful and loved, even in times that, in reality, weren't the best for them. So why shouldn't black girls be allowed to have that too? Clemons later went on to say, quote, "It's really exciting to make a movie aimed towards kids, and to kind of show them something that maybe they don't see in their own home. And because it's Disney, that gives us leeway to go as far as we want and create this dream world, or what the world should look like and what households should look like." End quote. So no, The Lady and the Tramp does not accurately portray how hard life was for interracial couples in pre-integration South, or even how hard life is for them today. But why should it have to? It's not a biopic, or educational material, or even historical fiction. It's a feel-good family flick set in a fictional version of a past. And those shouldn't be something only white kids should get.